Welcome to the deep dive. You're here because you want to cut through the noise and understand what really matters fast. You want to get smart without feeling like you've just wrestled a textbook.
Right.
Today, we're looking at something really interesting, a connection between how we teach you to learn effectively those good learning strategies and, well, the underlying philosophy of constructivism in education. It might sound a bit academic, but trust me, it has a direct impact on how you can learn best.
Mm-hmm.
We're diving into a foundational piece here, the 1992 article by Presley, Harris, and Marks.
Exactly. You flagged this article for us, and it's a great one. Our goal in this deep dive is, well, to show you how the core ideas behind teaching you smart ways to learn what we call strategy instruction actually fit hand in glove with this idea of constructivism.
Yeah.
It might challenge some initial ideas you have about teaching methods,
Yeah.
and maybe give you a clearer picture of what truly effective learning looks like.
Okay, so to get started, let's maybe nail down a couple of terms. Strategy instruction is basically teaching you specific mental tools, kind of step-by-step techniques to boost your performance, whether you're tackling a tricky article, writing a report, or solving a problem.
Right. Giving you the keys.
Think of it as giving you the keys to unlock better learning. Now, constructivism, that's the idea that you are actively building your own understanding. You're not just a sponge soaking up information. You're actively making sense of it and constructing your own knowledge. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. When strategy instruction first came about, some people who champion constructivist approaches were a bit wary.
Yeah, a little skeptical.
They thought it might be too much like old-fashioned, tell you exactly what to do teaching, but this article we're looking at really challenges that view.
Absolutely. Right from the beginning, Presley, Harris, and Marks are emphatic. They actually say, and I'm paraphrasing slightly, that the kind of good strategy instruction they're talking about is constructivist. They see themselves as already operating within that framework. It's almost like they're saying, hold on, you've got the wrong idea about what good strategy instruction really is.
Right. It's like finding out your two favorite bands actually share the same drummer. They're arguing that while good strategy instruction might use some techniques that look like direct teaching, like showing you how to do something, the ultimate aim is to get you to become a more strategic thinker.
Exactly. It's about empowering you.
It's about empowering you to come up with your own effective problem-solving methods. It's not about following some rigid script someone else wrote for you.
And what's fascinating to consider is how strategy instruction itself has evolved. If you go back a few decades, it was also about teaching single, isolated tricks or techniques.
Uh-huh.
But now, the focus is much more on giving you a toolkit, a repertoire of interconnected strategies that you can pull out and use flexibly, depending on the situation.
Makes sense.
And crucially, these strategies are taught in real, meaningful contexts. You learn when and why to use them, which leads to a much deeper understanding and what the authors call ownership of those strategies.
Right.
Think about understanding a complex article. It's not just one skill, but a combination of things like thinking about what you already know, asking yourself questions as you read, summarizing, all working together.
Exactly. It's not just memorizing a list of steps. It's understanding how those steps help you achieve a goal. And that really ties into the heart of constructivism. The idea that knowledge, especially this kind of strategic know-how, becomes much more useful and memorable when you actively build it.
Totally. It leads to a more profound, almost intuitive grasp. It's one thing for someone to tell you a strategy. It's another for you to figure out how it best fits your own way of learning and thinking.
That's right. And the article actually touches on Moshman's breakdown of different flavors of constructivism, which helps us appreciate the nuances here.
Yeah.
You've got endogenous constructivism, which is very much in the Piagetian tradition, child-led discovery. The emphasis is on child-led exploration and discovery with minimal direct instruction. The idea there is that you build understanding primarily through your own interactions with the world. Like a young child figuring out that if they stack blocks a certain way, they might fall.
Right. Then you've got exogenous constructivism, which involves a bit more teaching through things like modeling and explanation, but it still puts a lot of weight on your personal interpretation and how you make sense of that information.
Okay.
So someone might show you a technique, but you're actively connecting it to what you already know and adapting it to fit your own understanding.
And then there's dialectical constructivism, often associated with Vygotsky. This approach is more about a middle ground where you get hints and prompts, what's often called scaffolding rather than full-blown explanations.
Right, guiding you.
The goal is to guide you towards independence by helping you internalize those strategies through interaction. Think of a teacher not just giving you the answer to a tough problem, but asking questions that nudge you in the right direction so you can solve it yourself.
Which perfectly leads us to this critical concept of scaffolded teaching. The authors really highlight this as a cornerstone of good strategy instruction.
Yeah.
It's not about just telling you what to do step by step, but about providing the right level of support at the right time, encouraging you to actively develop your skills through interaction with someone who knows more, the teacher, in this case.
A dynamic process.
Exactly. It's a
Yeah.
dynamic process that adjusts to your individual progress.
Exactly. And this is where we can directly address some of the criticisms that have been raised against strategy instruction. Mary Poplin, for example, who's a strong voice in advocating for constructivism, she has worried that strategy instruction can break learning down into isolated parts, assume learners are passive recipients,
Yeah, like empty vessels.
be too rigid and inflexible, focus on superficial facts, and prioritize what the school wants over what you, the learner, are actually interested in.
And the authors of this article are quite clear. They disagree with that picture of good strategy instruction.
Right. They push back.
They acknowledge that maybe some earlier attempts at strategy instruction might have fallen into those traps, focusing on isolated skills out of context, for example. But they argue that the field has really matured and moved beyond those simplistic approaches.
So what does good strategy instruction look like then, according to them?
Well, what's particularly insightful is when they lay out what they see as the essential elements of effective modern strategy teaching. They emphasize introducing only a few strategies at a time, and sometimes even teaching them as flexible groups that can be used together.
Okay, manageable chunks.
Exactly. They also stress the importance of giving you plenty of time to practice and apply these strategies across different types of tasks. So you can really explore how they work, adapt them to new situations, and integrate them with other strategies you know.
Makes sense, not just one-off practice.
And they really advocate for teaching to a point of mastery where you feel confident and competent using them.
And it's not just about solitary practice, right? They highlight the role of the teacher.
Oh, absolutely. The crucial role of the teacher in actively demonstrating these strategies, but not just silently. They emphasize verbalizing the thinking process, showing you how an expert thinks through a problem using these strategies.
Thinking aloud.
Precisely. But importantly, this isn't presented as a rigid formula. It's about showing flexibility and how the teacher themselves might adapt a strategy depending on the situation, making it clear that you have that same flexibility.
Key.
They also make a key point about explicitly explaining why these strategies are valuable and when they can be most useful. But perhaps even more importantly, they stress the need to encourage you to actually notice how using these strategies impacts your own learning and your results.
Making it personal.
It's about making that connection personal and tangible for you so you see the direct benefit.
And the feedback loop is so important here. They talk about providing detailed feedback and engaging in collaborative discussions that are tailored to your specific needs and where you're struggling.
Right. Not just generic comments.
These aren't just generic good job or try harder comments. They're about having a real dialogue where the teacher might re-explain things in a different way based on your questions and how you're understanding the strategy. It's a genuine back and forth.
Moreover, good strategy instruction involves actively working together, teacher and student, to identify opportunities where you can take these strategies and apply them in new situations.
Transferring the skills.
Exactly. The teacher might offer some initial suggestions, but often it's about prompting you to think about your own schoolwork and figure out where these tools might be helpful. And then, crucially, practicing how to adapt them to those new tasks, with the aim of you developing your own understanding of how they fit.
Motivation is also a key factor they address, isn't it?
Definitely. They point out that keeping your motivation up involves highlighting how gaining these strategies can actually empower you as a learner and give you a greater sense of control over your academic progress.
Yeah, feeling capable.
It's about showing you that you're becoming a more effective and independent learner.
And finally, there's reflection.
Yes, finally, they emphasize the importance of encouraging you to regularly reflect on your learning and plan how you're going to approach tasks. It's about valuing the thought process and the strategic thinking involved, not just whether you got the right answer in the end.
Right, the process matters.
Teachers model this kind of reflective practice themselves and create a classroom culture where thinking through problems is seen as more valuable than simply completing assignments.
So when you put all those pieces together, it paints a very different picture from the criticism that strategy instruction is just about rote learning. It's much more dynamic, student-focused, and, as the authors argue, constructivist.
Exactly. And they then go on to explicitly connect these elements back to the core principles of constructivism. They argue that good strategy instruction is inherently customized and deeply relies on that scaffolded interaction we discussed earlier.
Hmm.
They even take Rogoff's 6 key characteristics of effective scaffolding and demonstrate how they are naturally embedded in good strategy instruction.
Can you remind us what those are, briefly?
Sure, things like recruiting your interest, reducing the steps to make it manageable, keeping you focused on the goal, marking discrepancies between your work and the ideal, controlling frustration,
Oh, that's a big one.
and demonstrating an idealized version of the strategy, all part of good strategy teaching.
And because this interaction is so central, the authors stress that strategy instruction is inherently unique for each student.
Right, it has to be. As the content gets harder, as your knowledge grows, and as the teacher understands you and the strategies better, the support changes. It evolves.
It's a very personalized learning experience.
This personalized aspect is further reinforced by what they term communication constraints.
Mm.
They explain how the very act of communication between a teacher and a student ensures that learning isn't just a one-way transmission.
Okay, what are these constraints?
Well, they outline 5 key features. First, the teacher's own understanding of the strategy shapes how they explain it. No two people get it exactly the same way. Second, let's be honest, some people are just naturally better at explaining things than others. Right? Teachers vary in their communication skills. Third, the willingness of both the teacher and you, the student, to actively participate makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Are you really engaged? Are you asking questions? That cooperative spirit matters.
Right, it takes two to tango.
Fourth, your belief in your teacher's expertise can influence how you process the information. If you trust them, you're probably more receptive.
Makes sense. And the fifth?
And fifth, even the best explanation is never perfectly complete. There are always gaps, things assumed, things unsaid. Your feedback, verbal or nonverbal, is crucial for filling those gaps. Good teachers want you to speak up when confused.
It's not a weakness, it's part of learning.
Exactly. And they add a crucial 6th point. Teachers interpret your questions differently based on their understanding of you and the class context. A simple why could mean many things.
So the teacher needs to know their students.
Absolutely. Responding effectively requires knowing the individual.
So it's this ongoing back and forth, this dynamic interplay that ensures strategy learning is active construction, not passive reception.
Precisely. And the authors then circle back to Mary Poplin's characteristics of constructivist teaching and systematically show how good strategy instruction aligns with each one.
Okay, let's walk through that. How does it align with teaching whole tasks?
Well, they address Poplin's idea of teaching whole tasks through simultaneous whole and part instruction by pointing out that strategies are taught within the context of real, meaningful activities, like reading a complete story or writing an entire essay.
So not in isolation.
Right. While you might zoom in on a specific strategy, it's always within that larger framework. They mentioned the SAIL program in Maryland as an example, teaching reading strategies while students actually read literature.
Okay. What about encouraging the search for meaning?
They tackle that principle too. While they agree with it fundamentally, the authors caution against relying solely on discovery learning.
Why is that?
They point out that not all students have the same background knowledge. Some processes are just really hard to discover alone, and you might even discover ineffective or wrong strategies.
Oh, yeah. Bad habits.
Exactly. They cite research on essay revision and math errors. So they argue for a balance between guided instruction and exploration.
Makes sense. And the role of errors.
They highlight that in good strategy instruction, mistakes aren't failures, they're diagnostic tools.
Data for the teacher.
Exactly. Clues into your thinking process, which helps the teacher adjust. Plus, seeing your performance improve after learning a strategy really demonstrates its value.
What about sparking passion or interest?
The authors discuss how effective strategy teaching can actually do that. By enabling you to succeed and showing that achievement comes from controllable strategies, it combats helplessness and fosters positive feelings about learning.
Feeling empowered.
Right. And teachers modeling strategic thinking show that even experts use these tools.
And does it lead to broader changes, transformations?
They connect good strategy instruction to that idea too. Improving reading comprehension, for example, can ripple outwards better understanding in other subjects, more motivation, more knowledge overall. The Matthew effect, sometime.
Where the rich get richer, academically speaking.
Sort of, yeah. And finally, they address the point that what you know predicts what you learn. Good instructors are sensitive to your current skills and interests, adjusting their teaching and finding alternatives if something isn't working for you.
So they really build a strong case for alignment.
They do. After showing these connections, they directly compare good strategy instruction with what actually happens in classrooms labeled constructivist. And they find many overlaps.
Such as?
Focus on you actively building knowledge with guidance, group interaction, ongoing assessment, natural discussions, applying learning, individual progress, varying explicitness, modeling, and always emphasizing understanding over rote memorization.
So if there are so many overlaps, what's the main difference they see?
They argue that the primary distinction often comes down to the degree of explicitness in the instruction. Good strategy instruction tends to be more direct in naming, demonstrating, and explaining specific strategies,
Compared to?
compared to some constructivist approaches, especially those leaning towards pure discovery. Even the more guided forms, like dialectical constructivism, might be less explicit about the how and why of a specific strategy sometimes.
And they have examples where less explicit approaches maybe didn't work as well.
Yeah, to illustrate this, they bring up reported challenges in teaching math strategies using reciprocal teaching without enough explicit guidance. They mention Resnick and Brown and Campione, highlighting cases where students struggled or things got chaotic without a clearer instructional framework.
Interesting. So it suggests explicitness has its place.
It seems so. They conclude this part by suggesting, that more direct research is needed to compare really well-implemented strategy instruction with purely dialectical constructivist teaching.
To see if the outcomes differ significantly.
Right. They even float the idea that despite different approaches, the learning outcomes might actually be quite similar sometimes, because knowledge construction is fundamental and instruction just provides the materials, so to speak.
That's a fascinating point.
So, to bring our deep dive to a close, the key takeaway is this. Good strategy instruction, while it might sometimes involve clear explanations and modeling, is fundamentally aligned with constructivist principles.
Right. It's not the opposite.
Not at all. It's all about actively involving you in developing your own understanding and personalizing how you approach academic tasks. It's not a rigid set of rules, but more like flexible guidelines that you, the learner, adapt and make your own.
And here's something to really think about. Given that truly effective strategy instruction seems to naturally embody so many core ideas of constructivism, how can educators better bridge this perceived gap between these two really important perspectives in education?
Yeah, how do we blend them best?
How can we find that sweet spot between providing clear guidance and nurturing that essential element of independent discovery so that you, as a learner, are truly empowered and get the most out of your learning journey? It's a question worth pondering, whether you're a student yourself or simply curious about how we learn best. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.